Hi, everyone. In today's Peace and Happiness podcast, I have our guest, Paulina.
Hi.
And I do have to say, she is one of my favorite makeup artists. She's amazing at what she does. And I want to throw a disclaimer. I apparently forgot to tell her it was a video. So I just find it funny that I have my makeup artist with no makeup because my bad. So she's totally being a team player. So I want to be thankful for her just being able to share. She is one of the previous attendees to the Peace and Happiness workshop. And so I wanted to share. Our goal is always to try and get the listener to maybe take a nugget, a takeaway, an aha moment that you can really make yours and have it kind of help you create a life you love. So, Paulina, thank you for being here with me
Thank you
today.
for having me.
Thank you. So when I invited you, I asked you, what are the two takeaways that you got from the workshop? And I always ask that to everyone that so I can know what to talk about. And you mentioned two. You actually mentioned three. You mentioned the first one was forgiveness. So tell me a little bit about that. What did you get? What did you walk away that was different on your thinking or thought process regarding forgiveness?
Well, you did have us right. I remember split down the middle. One side was I just remember one side had to do with like why do we forgive?
Okay, so I wrote it in the big old whiteboard.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm writing all of your guys's, all of the audience answers. Okay.
Yes. And so we all kind of had similar things where forgiveness was like it's it had to do with like for you to heal, for you to like move past things or um it just had a lot to do with, like, us, I noticed.
Did the group realize that all the answers they were giving me were about them?
Yeah,
They
we
did?
did. We started
No,
to at the
at the
end.
end? Okay.
I think we were all looking at each other like, "Okay, there's gotta be something to this." Um, but it
Yeah, so everyone sounds off and everyone starts saying, we should forgive, to let go,
Mhm.
to have peace because
Yes.
God forgave us, so we can be forgiven, so we can move on,
Yes.
so we don't allow the poison to take over us. I mean, I've done
Yeah.
the workshop for 5 years now, and I'll get anywhere from 8 to 30 answers. And they're always the same, something along the lines of
Mhm.
all these things.
And you know, I'm used to being in school, so I'm like, okay, I got some answers, and I'm shouting mine out, and then it really came down to when you realize there's nothing to forgive, that's forgiveness. And I was like, what? Let me write this down again. Let me write this down. Like, what do you mean? And so I know that you normally don't share a whole lot about your experiences, your life experiences, but only when it's needed, right? But I remember you sharing your story and pretty much just putting it out there like, look, I realized that there was nothing to forgive with certain people in my life. And that statement that really helped me to continue to heal my relationship with my parents, but not in a direct way. So I took that and I was like, okay, I need to work on my own healing with myself because I know that and I know you said this before, is that our parents did the best they could with the knowledge that they had. So that's what I've taken away too. So in that forgiveness piece, it's been also that statement. So being more understanding to know that I can't go to like my dad and tell him like, "Hey, like I forgive you," and he's gonna be like, like, "What do you mean? What do
did I
you
do?
mean? What did I do?" Because I don't know what it was like for him. I don't know what it was like for my mom, and now for me being a mom, and I'm getting emotional because now I'm realizing the just like when you even though you have children, you're still a human being and you still have wounds. And so coming back from those wounds can be very, very difficult,
Most definitely.
And so I think it just everything when I think on my healing and, for you not giving up on me. And I say not giving up by, telling me, "Hey, we're having a peace and happiness workshop. We're having this going on." And just joining that and learning the idea of forgiveness was just so mind-blowing for me that it's helped me really become a better person. I just don't want to say a better mother because I'm still me, just like my mom is still her, and she has her own things that she's been through, just like I have too, and just to be mindful of that and not to put that on my own daughter now. So yeah, that was a huge takeaway is the idea of forgiveness, and I know each of us in the workshop, we all had our own thing we were working on, so I'm sure we were all kind of just taking that in and maybe realizing it at different points after that, following the workshop.
So you jumped really good into the like you said before we started recording with your makeup. All or nothing, right? So you went to the all. You went to the point of you took away and walked away from the workshop saying forgiveness in truth when I forgive is that I realize I have nothing to forgive. Right?
Yes.
And then the beginning part of it is we forgive so we can let go, so we can move on, so we can have peace, so we can have poison. But you totally skipped the middle chunk. Which is okay. I'm going to go over it now. Yeah. Because that just speaks to your personality. Yeah. You want to go, like you said, you're in in school.
I'm like, give me more, give me more.
Right? Yeah, you're like, I'm trying to get an A here, right? So good. But I remember, so once I get out everyone's wording, I ask, is there anything else? Is there anything we're missing here? And everyone starts looking at each other like, no, I think everything's up there.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, close your eyes. And then I start writing on the board. And then I said, okay, ready? What about this? Do you remember what was on there?
No, I'm trying to bring myself back, but
what I write on there, and you can hear a pin drop. You could feel people's jaw on the ground once they open their eyes and they see what I write on the board, because they're like, how is that not the thing that we all should have said first? And nobody guessed it.
I still am trying to remember. Does it have power?
Should I leave everyone else in suspense? Come to the workshop if you want the answer.
I think so. I know if I looked at my notes. If I looked at my notes, I would have it. That's why you got to bring a lot of paper.
Okay. Now I'm deciding, do I want to leave everyone in suspense or do you come back? Okay. So once everyone's quiet and I write, to love on them, to show them grace.
Yeah.
That's why we should forgive. We should forgive to love on people, to show them grace. And all the different workshops I've had, everyone's always like, yeah. And there's always some that are like, no, I'm not going to forgive them for that.
Yeah.
But for the majority, I would say like 80%, they kind of look at the board and think like, how is that not the answer? How did we as a pool of society, between all of us, not guess that?
I think for me, I was more open to hearing that answer because of the amount of healing I've already done. Had I been even like maybe a couple years ago, I would have been like very like that. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Love? But now, as you say that, you used to tell me, like you still tell me, like you choose love or fear. So now that makes sense what you're saying.
Because we're always coming from fear. Well, if I forgive you, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm saying it's okay what you did? Does that mean I'm saying it didn't matter? Because it really did matter. It really did hurt me, right?
Yeah.
So there's that fear of, well, if I forgive you, am I being unloving to myself and just leaving you off the hook, as some people say? And then I ask the question, I don't know if you remember this. I say, okay, if you forgive somebody to let go, if you forgive somebody to move on, to get peace, to not be poisoned, is that conditional?
Yes.
It is conditional.
Yes.
You're doing it so you can move on, so you can let go. And I said, so what kind of moving on do you get? If you gave conditional forgiveness, what kind of moving on do you get?
Conditional.
Yeah. And what kind of peace do you get?
Conditional peace.
Conditional. Yeah. And then I said, okay, but if you forgive them to love on them, to show them grace, is that conditional? No. That's unconditional. So what kind of peace do you get?
Just peace.
Yeah. Unconditional peace. Unconditional moving on.
Yeah.
Unconditional release. And in that moment, always, it's the same thing. The room is just like, whoa.
Yeah. Like it feels
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, like
again.
right now, like it feels right now because it's like, whoa, so that's forgiveness,
Yeah.
right? And so here's the thing, and then everyone's still there, and I kind of want to pull them out a little bit, so I have to throw something very radical,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I
Mhm.
say what stuck with you, and I say, and to tell you the truth, when you really start delving into forgiveness,
Mhm.
you will one day get to the point. I'm not saying right now, because
Yeah.
even just forgiving to love on them and showing grace
Yeah.
can be a bit much for some people in the room, but one day you'll even get to the point where you realize that there was nothing to forgive.
Yeah. And it's how you explain, I think, your explanations, your teaching, and your like just fully how you said, what kind do you give? And I'm giving you an answer, a response, right? And
Mhm.
so
I
we're
set you
like,
guys up.
yeah, like you really do
I
set
know.
us up. But that's teaching. That's good teaching, is what
Well,
I'm saying.
thank you. I appreciate your comment. No, yeah, most definitely. I set it up because I do share my story at that point.
Mhm.
And then I share at the end of the day that what I once judged, the people that hurt me or
Mhm.
whatever that I thought, tainted me or broke me, that at the end of the day, if I look a little bit deeper and try to understand them,
Mhm.
that they probably were broken and hurt. And so they were just passing on. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean I like it. That doesn't mean I approve of it. That doesn't mean I wash it away as if it was right. It just means I understand that from where you were raised and from what you experienced, this was the result.
Yes.
And I don't have to take these actions, these behaviors, or these situations to define me. And if I release the things that happen as something that defines me, then you were never strong enough to really touch that my soul. Yeah. And it's just society that makes us think.
Yes. And this was at the beginning of, I think, where were we at? The very beginning of the pandemic, too. And I know that, it was still, and I was early in my pregnancy, too.
Mhm.
So I know it was a little, we were all like distanced from each other, but it's just,
Yeah, I think it was like in February, March. Yeah, it was.
yeah.
It was like my last
Yes.
workshop before we went into a full blown pandemic lockdown. You're right.
Yes. Yeah. And I just like, I mean, we need more of those interactions. I'm just thinking like, oh, I want to go to another one. I should have studied before.
I totally get it. And so it's funny you say, now I want to go to another one, because
Yeah.
before we started filming, we were talking about how, and I told you, I'm not pushy.
Mhm.
I'm actually going to throw a name out there because there's lots of Ginas. But there's one girl right now that I'm pushing like you, that I'm
Mhm.
constantly messaging. I don't know why I want to cry. Wow, it's weird. But anyways, woo, okay, weird. But I don't push people. I don't invite people over and over
Yeah.
again. But every once in a while, there will be this one person that I'm on them and I'm on them. And I was on you. I was constantly, hey, so I'm having a workshop. And
Yeah.
I randomly invite a lot of people and send out or like forward. But I don't like really like hang on to somebody that I'm constantly, every time I'm going to have a workshop, invite them. And you were one of those people. And like you said, you resisted it. And
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about that because
Okay.
currently I'm working with a couple and they say, we're going to do this, but we so do not want to do this. Like they don't want to do the work because they're scared.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I've even heard people like they feel like they're going to break down and they were not going to function, or life is going to go off the rails.
Yeah.
Or I don't, there's a person I can think about just a few years ago. I haven't invited them in years, but I invited them a few years ago. There's like, it's just, I'm raising my kids and I just don't have the time for it and just can't really take that kind of space. And I'm like, this is why I want you there, because you have literally, back then she had baby. They were like 3. Now they're like 7 or 8. And I'm like, because I know, what's going on if we're raising
my
kids
back's
from
hurting
that
now
unhealed,
thinking
right?
about
Yeah.
that.
It's like, oh. So,
I feel heavy.
so if you could talk to me a little bit of why you resisted so long, and now in hindsight, like what are your thoughts?
So with resisting, I'm gonna try to stay on track because I know I could go a lot of different routes on this topic. But personally, I knew that it was going to start something that I was not going to stop.
Why did you know that?
Because, like we mentioned earlier, right? Like I have no makeup on right now, so it's like all or nothing. Like I'm gonna show up glam, or I'm not gonna have anything at all. Like I'm not gonna. I either have time or I don't have time.
Got it.
So I knew that once I started opening up, like a butterflies in my head right now. When I started to open up, that I was gonna have to keep going. That once you start to put knowledge into your mind, once you open your awareness, that there's no going back, because now you know, like now you're aware, like this is why you do this. This is why you're in the cycle that you're in. This is like when you say forgiveness, right? And not making things conditional, um, for yourself. Like the same for you. Like you can't put conditional love on yourself. Like it has to be unconditional. So, there were things that I talked to you about that still feels very fresh, but
I know one day you're gonna talk about them in public.
Oh no, that's crazy. being being trained as a school counselor, going to school, being trained like a therapist almost. I don't have the license, but I the training was similar. Going into therapy, I've done that before, and I'm just talking. They're asking some questions here and there, but I'm only going to get as far as I want to. So now I actually have the control with a therapist, because they can't really step in certain ways. And so having that knowledge of like how a therapist works, it wasn't going to do the job for me, because I know how this is going to go. So for me to be able to express to you all the things that I've been through that have weighed on me so heavily, and for you to like give that unconditional love for somebody who like doesn't fully know me or hasn't known me for very long, and for you to be like, look, this is your story and I'm here for you and I have no judgment, but to feel that there's no judgment is what was so breaking. Like that was a breakthrough for me. And I think that another resistance piece of that would be because I feel like in a lot of cultures, it's like you have to be strong. You have to be strong in that you don't show emotion, that you don't tell people your problems, that you just survive, that you just move past
You
it
act
all.
like nothing's happened, and
Yes.
you hold an image of being good.
Yes.
And I like Brene Brown, where she says that when you put shame and you hide it, it's like you're putting it in a petri dish and you're actually making it get so big. You're giving those things that you've shared with me because you felt, they need to be things shameful, right? And we hide them, and we actually make them grow roots. And they're these huge monsters, and they kind of define us. And no, they're not. They're just human things. That's it. That's all they really are.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's stuff that it's unconscious things that that we experience, that we see other people do, that we do, that's been done, that collectively we do, or it's been done. And I always say it's hard being a human.
Yeah, it is.
It's very hard being a human. So to just, step back and say, okay. I always remember on the forgiveness portion, it wasn't the time that you came. I think it was like a workshop or two before you. And there was a man, and everyone's like, "Ooh, like, oh my gosh, how did we not think of the love on them, right?" But there was this guy, hell no. Like, he was mad. He was love on them, like, and they just get away with it. They just get
Yeah.
he was upset. And I said, and it was with his parents, right? And I said, "Oh," I go, "Well, what do you propose? Like, if you don't want them to get away, so you want revenge?"
Mm-hmm.
And then he stood back. You want them to like pay? You want them punished? And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, "Yeah." But he realized, like, yes, he wanted that, but at the same time, he wasn't okay with wanting that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was having a hard time answering me. And of course, we're in a room and full of people. And I said, "It's okay for you
Mm-hmm.
to want revenge.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay for you to want them to suffer. That is a valid feeling." And then the whole room's like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. This woman talks about love. Like, what is she talking about? I go, "It's okay to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
However, do you really want to choose that?"
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's unconscious, it's natural, it's animalistic, it's
Yeah.
in nature for us. You hurt me, I'm gonna scratch you back. That's normal.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason he was struggling with it is because that is not in truth who he is. Once he would get his revenge, he'd feel bad. Most of us would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we'd also realize that even with our revenge, it didn't really take our pain away. And so in that moment, I said, it's okay for you to feel that way. There's nothing wrong. But do you want to choose that? And that's what Peace and Happiness Workshop create. I always say it's to help you create a life you love.
Yeah.
And would you love your life if you went and got revenge? So to be able to make conscious choices. And so a lot of things we experienced done to us, we did collectively, whatever. A lot of it has come from an unconscious place. Youth, childhood, past traumas, passed down generational, whatever it is. And that's unconscious. Doesn't make it less hurtful. But if we can start to see that it's unconscious, then we can peel back and, well, what do we consciously? We want to say the buck stops here. Like, I cut the chains here.
Yes. And I know you've talked about the cutting the generational patterns and just making a change. And so I just keep that in mind that it stops here.
Yeah. Yeah. It stops with you.
Yeah.
Like, she gets to, I always say that my relationship with my mom is my model of the relationship my daughter should have with me.
Yes. And you told me that. So then I'm like, okay.
So I'm going to be so loving to my mom and so forgiving and so unconditional because that's what I want from my daughter.
Yeah, because it's true that what you model to them, they're gonna do what you do versus what you say. Like, I already know.
Yep. Most definitely.
So yes.
So last question, would you recommend for people to do the workshop or sessions?
Yes. Either one, whatever. We're all different. We work differently. Like, it's whatever resonates with you, whatever you're feeling.
And you think there's value?
Yeah, there's definitely value to doing both of them. Maybe attending the workshop and then seeing where your resilience lies and help it open your eyes to what you should be working on. And then joining having a one-on-one session and continuing with that, because healing it takes work.
It does.
It takes a lot of work. And that's what I said. There's my resistance. I knew it was going to be work. I didn't want to open that
Was it
box.
worth it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would
be
a different, like, I'm a different person. Like, I shouldn't say I've evolved is what it is. I've evolved, and I'm holding up to the things that I learned from you and putting them in everyday life, because that's really where it matters, is how do we bring that out of our little bubble and to bring it into the bigger world.
Yeah. Because when we teach it or we practice it, we embody it,
Yes.
we're spreading it, it becomes more us. The more we give it, we get what we give. So the more we
Yes.
give of it, of these thoughts, these processes, these new ways of thinking, the more we get it. So
Yes.
thank you so much for
Thank you.
being with us here today. I really appreciate it. And from my heart to yours, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.